So now a new feature for you. I need to move my machine up to this point and start stitching again. Okay, it took me to this screen. What I did is I actually, when I came back, I had to push pause, and it took me to this screen. So I want to push new start point, and it has a scroll bar that I can scroll back, or I can actually disable my machine, and I will move my needle over to that point and push auto find, and the machine will find that point for me. So first off, I need to move the machine over, and I like to move it a little bit back, and it will stitch over the top of that, and rather than doing a tie off, it will actually stitch over, and so they kind of, those two stitches, the ending and the starting, kind of meld together a little bit. Now what I'm going to do is push the auto find, and I'm going to push follow and zoom in on this a little bit, because what I want to show you, and I don't know if you'll be able to see it, it already did it probably. There was a white dot that indicates where my path is and where my needle should be. And so what it did is, as I did the auto find, it moved that dot because it was over here. It had stitched a little bit away. And so when I pushed auto find, it moved the dot back right to there. So those two points are together again. Now I'm ready to start stitching. Accept. Now it's telling me, do I want to resume? And what I would like to do is bring up my bobbin thread. I can either use my full stitch or my handles on my Avante or Fusion, and bring up that bobbin thread. I'm going to pull all of these threads out of the way and let the stitching stitch over my previous, and ready to resume. I don't want to do a tie off on my start, but I still want it on the end. So I'm going to uncheck that, and I'm ready to go. I can save these threads right there and bury them if I want, or clip them off. So I'll just lay them aside and leave them. Isn't that an easy way of refinding the spot that the thread broke? My machine has finished stitching the pattern out for my first row. The screen says that I'm doing a manual jump, and so it disables my motors now so that I can actually move it and clip my threads, bring up my bobbin thread and clip it. And then what I will do is I'll push resume. What happens now is the machine automatically moves over to the start point. And let's see if we can zoom this across here, or pan this across. And you can see that white line. That's where it's going to take me, is right down to here. Now, I know that this is 8 inches, and if I do another 8 inches, that's 16 inches. My throat space on the Avante is 15 inches of quilting space. Even though it's an 18-inch machine, I have 15 inches of quilting space. So I know I will not be able to stitch my second row without advancing my quilt. But as I push the resume, the machine will move over to that start point, and it will do a tie off. And so I will move with that, and as it starts that tie off, I will push the pause button, and it will stop there. And then I'll know where my positioning point is as I move the quilt forward. We're ready to resume. The machine will move over. Okay, it brought up my bobbin thread. That tells me that's where the start point's going to be. Now I'm going to push resume, and it's going to move back and start doing a tie-offs. And then I will push pause. As soon as I'm going to push pause, and I want it to stop, and it brings up a new screen. So now what I want to do is push the needle down. That's where my positioning point is, and then disable my motors. From here, I'm going to take my clamps off, and then I will advance my quilt, and as I advance my quilt, the machine will roll with me. Watch the machine roll. You need to always remember to disable your motors or the machine doesn't roll. It tears your fabric. Okay, we're ready. Put my clamps back on. Always want to make sure that you clamp your quilt and secure things. And I will go back and stitch down both sides in a minute before we start stitching. All right. Here we go. There is, if we can move this aside, I could move that aside, there is a white dot. That is where it would start stitching if I pushed resume. That dot is down here someplace because that's where it went to. But I need it to reset to my current position, which is up here. I have a button that says Reset Current Resume Position. So when I push this button, it will take that pattern and it will move it right there. It leaves that dot where I want to start, but it moves the pattern. So it's actually shifted the pattern for me. So as I do that, do you see the crosshairs? They move down right where I want to start. The needle, the crosshairs, and the design are right where I need them to be. Now I can lift up my needle and I could disable my motors because I need to base down the side of my quilt. So we'll go ahead and base that down. Never want to quilt edge-to-edge quilting without securing your sides. Okay, I've basted the left side, I've basted the right side, my clamps are on, I'm ready to go. Now I can go ahead and push resume because I know that I positioned it back to that spot. It's at a position, it's telling me that it will move into position. If it moves other than up to that spot where I know that it should, I'm in trouble. Then I want to push cancel or pause. So we'll go ahead and push. It moved right up to the position. Now I need to press my current, because this is into my pattern. I have a full quilt here. So the current pattern is this pass. And if I want it to tie off, I need to press that. Start stitching is everything is the way I want it to be. Resume. Okay, it's going to tie off. I want to bring up that bobbin thread, and so I just swished my thread underneath there and got that. And there we go again. See how the pattern is quilting off of the quilt so that it's being consistent all the way around my quilt. And I can watch it quilt. The same thing will happen again. It will quilt across the quilt. It will pause, wait for me to clip my threads, and then you'll go ahead and push resume, move it over, and it'll come to that point. You'll push pause and advance your quilt and go ahead and follow the previous things that I talked about, and you'll be able to quilt all of your quilt out. Now, I'm going to go ahead and pause this because I want to show you what happens if I have too much pattern and not enough quilt. So we're actually going to just push cancel, and it's just going to stop. It doesn't shift my positioning of where I've laid it out on the quilt, but it just paused, or it just stopped that. And it sent my start point back to the beginning. What I want to do is go to quilt, and I want to show you how, and we'll clip these threads so that we can move this machine around. I want to go to the crop menu. So let's say we want to crop everything below this. You know, we sometimes don't figure exactly right, or the fabric stretches, or things aren't quite right as we get to the bottom of our quilt. And so we want to crop some of this off at the bottom. Too much pattern and not enough fabric. So what I want to do is I'm going to move my crosshair off, my vertical, my up and down crosshair off of the pattern, because I don't want to crop anything from the left of the pattern. I only want to crop below it. I'm using my bottom left button, and so if I were to crop it here, it would crop everything from the vertical line over and everything from the horizontal line down. So let's move it out of the screen, out of the design. Now I know that I will only crop everything below. Press, and let's say the thing you want to do is make sure this is positioned first before you start cropping, so you know how much you need to crop. And let's say we want to crop right this much. And I'm going to hit bottom left, crop. It's going to take everything from the bottom of the quilt off, and I will only have this much. Now it's a process. There it is. Well, maybe I cropped too much. Maybe I need to crop a little less. I can move my machine down, and as long as I don't leave this screen pushed done, I can keep cropping. And I'll move that down and add a little bit more to it. Bottom left, crop. It's a processing time because it's a big file. And there, it added that back to my quilt. This is the quilt that we saw earlier. It's the very same pattern that we quilted on the machine, a little larger. This is at 12 inches. And as I got to the bottom, I noticed that I had too much pattern and not enough top fabric, so I had to crop. And I just want to show you that as you crop, this crops a straight line across here because it has to have a path to find the next design as it goes back up into the quilt. So beware of that as you crop, that if you're doing an edge to edge, crop it so that it's off the quilt, or at least in the binding area, so that it doesn't end up into your quilting area.